G'day everyone, I'm artist Wayne Dowsent and welcome to my ANZAC portrait series. Beside me is a painting of Ted Mulligan, and Ted started his military career with the Australian Light Horse. He'll be 98 this year and he still rides a horse, so I can't wait to paint him riding for my ANZAC portrait. But until then, ladies and gentlemen, please enjoy part one of our interview with Mr. Ted Mulligan.
I'm Ted Mulligan. I live here in Guyra and I've been here for about 10 years, although I've lived in the district all my life. I was born in Armidale at Keola Hospital, which now has gone by the board, and I lived at a place, Glenore, 12 miles west of Guyra. Lived there with my parents for all my young life. I had 2 brothers and 4 sisters. We lived out on a property called Glenore. Well, I don't know who taught me to ride. I think I got on a horse as soon as I could walk, or it wasn't long after, and because that was the means of transport in those days. If you couldn't ride, you had to walk. I don't know when I first started. Probably about 4 or 5 years old, and the first horse I ever had, I remember, I called him Digger, and used to ride him about, and for some reason or other another person got on him one day and he threw them and broke both his arms, so I was never allowed to ride Digger again. But after that I acquired another horse or 2, plenty of horse about, because my father and his brothers used to breed horses, so there was no shortage of them. And in time I went on and I used to break horses in, broke in dozens and dozens of them. I started school, I suppose, at about 6 years of age. All the other children in the school, we used to meet probably at our place, ride horses up to school. And it was about 20 children, was as much as ever at the school. Never any more, I think, and probably not many less. And they always had this teachers. They were usually the young students from Teachers College used to come out, and they allocated to these small schools, and they did a tremendous job. We didn't give them much help, of course, because we wagged it every time when we had the chance, but nevertheless, we got on all right, I suppose, and had a lot of fun there. A lot of the children were not the brightest kids in the world, and the teachers were usually on their first school, and to teach 6 classes at the one time, I think was a tremendous effort, and full credit to the people that come there. They're always very, very nice people, and as a matter of fact, they boarded with us, with my mother and father, and of course got to know them very well. And anyway, we got a reasonable education out of it, and sometimes some of the rest of us had the opportunity after 6th class going to other schools. I went to school in Guyra for 12 months. The convent school was the only high school in Guyra. I went to it for 12 months, and then I went to De La Salle in Armidale for 12 months. And finished up, I left school at 14, and that was about the normal thing in those days. It's different to what the children do now. But then I found the best education was after we left school. We learned a lot more after school, but the basics we learned at school. So we can't complain. We did pretty well. Because I left school in the Depression years, no one had 2 bob. And to get while we had plenty of country and that sort of thing, at least we had plenty to eat, so we were very fortunate in that respect. But to get a few shillings together, we used to trap rabbits of a night, set traps all day, as well as our other work. We worked on the property, helped out parents with their work running the property, and then we'd set traps, run around them at night, usually finish up about 10 or 11 o'clock at night, then up at daylight next morning to run the traps. That was all right in the winter time, but of course the skins were worth nothing in the summer, so all we did then was trap rabbits to get rid of them, fumigate them in the burrows and poison them. We killed thousands and thousands of rabbits. As I said, I had 2 brothers and 4 sisters. We used to all work on the property, and we all got on well, and we were great ones for sport. We loved sport, a lot of us. As we got older, we finished up, we had a cricket team out there, and that was when the boys all got bigger, where our cousins lived a mile or 2 away. We had a cricket team, and we could put a cricket team in the field of all Mulligans. And we did pretty well with it too, because we won the competition here 9 years running. And we beat Armidale district side. We wouldn't do that very often, of course, but we did once. They beat us plenty of times as well. But anyway, that's the way it was. I played a hell of a lot of cricket. I gradually got a little bit better. No world beater, but I made a lot of runs. We played in the local competition here. Guyra cricket was quite strong in those days. I know at one particular time they had 10 teams in the local competition. Now they have 1 or 2 who are very substandard. But pre-war, cricket was very good, and every little village in the district seemed to have a team. When we played competition cricket on Saturday, then we'd probably play at some village on the Sunday. If there wasn't a game like that available, there were several challenge shields in the district. Any team with it, the people would give a trophy that you had when you won the first game, and then that was held till you were beaten. And it was played all over, well, this district anyway. Any team within probably 50 miles could challenge for it. And so with the result, we got a terrible lot of cricket, and naturally most of the fellas improved, and that's and we enjoyed it. We lived for our cricket really in the summertime, and later on I got picked to go in a team to Tasmania, and I played in Tasmania for 6 weeks. Another chap from Guyra, it was in New South Wales countryside, and and of course that was another world as far as I was concerned in those days. Tasmania, we went down on a ship called the Strathaired, and that was the biggest luxury liner at that stage I'd ever seen even. And we travelled all over Tasmania, and I had a good time. I got a reasonable amount of runs there, and we came back on a sister ship called the Strathaired. And it's a funny thing too, I got back home on a particular day, and I had previously joined the army, and the next day, after living a life of luxury down around Tasmania and living it up, had to ride from there to Inverell, and 60 miles I think it was. So anyway, God spare me days I saw stick from not having been on a horse, for quite a while. Anyway, I went to a camp there, and that was the first of many camps I had. In about 1937, they had some recruiting rallies because Hitler was on the warpath at that stage, and it was obvious there was going to be another war before too long, and they had recruiting rallies in various centres, and my brother and I, he was 4 years younger than me, but we joined up here in Guyra, but we joined Armidale Troop, and we were a member of that for quite some little time. We used to go down sometimes of a night with another person and do a bit of drill at the drill hall, and then my first experience. Oh yes, that's right. We used to have then, when they formed a troop here in Guyra, training weekends, I think once a month. But the first camp I went to was in Inverell, and that was what I said a while ago after I'd been playing cricket in Tasmania, came back and I went to Inverell with the Armidale troop. A little later on they formed a troop here in Armidale and in Guyra, and I became a member of that with a lot of others. And we trained, I think, every month we'd have a weekend's training. There was a rifle range down here at a place called Urandangi, not very far away from Guyra, about 3 or 4 miles. And we'd go down there and we'd have, say, a day on the rifle range and then doing manoeuvres and being taught. We were taught by a chap that was a member of the 12th Light Horse in the First World War, a person named Les Moorhead. He was a lieutenant, and he had been the lieutenant in the Armidale troop, but when Guyra formed a troop, we transferred to Guyra. And he was the instructor for us, and we were in that then for 2 or 3 years before the war broke out, and then went to camp in Armidale. And one of the first things they did was hit us with needles. And the needles were very new in those days. I'd never had a needle before. But anyway, they were to give them in 3 batches and they gave us a lot in one and knocked a lot of us out. Well, you made us very, very crook anyway. And I know the day after we got the needles, there had been at least 250 fellas lay around the floor on the agricultural hall there, out to it, but we eventually got over it. Well, I could see that there was not going to be a light horse unit sent overseas, as they claimed that they were going to. But so I decided I'd join the AIF, and I didn't want to join the infantry, and they were talking about recruiting an Armour Division, and I thought, well, that would probably suit me. So I joined the Armour Division, and then went into the 2nd 7th Armoured Regiment. In fact, I was in it the first day it was formed, and I stopped in that unit for quite a long time. First of all, we were just out of Maitland. There was a very, very big camp there, about 30,000 people there. I was in that for quite some time, and after a while we were told we were going over to the Middle East. We had a march through Newcastle, and then a bit after that in Sydney, and we were supposed to go over on the Queen Mary. The Queen Mary she was berthed in there in Sydney at the particular time to take us over. But anyway, the powers that be must have altered their plans, and there was a prospect that Japan, obviously they knew that Japan was going to be involved before long, and so instead of us going over to the Middle East, they sent us to Tamworth for a start, which was much against the grain of most of the fellows in it, because they had ideas of going over to Egypt. Anyway, we were there in Tamworth for quite some time, and an interesting thing happened while we were in Tamworth. Some of the fellows turned on a bit of a blue at the railway station. There was a protest, I suppose, about them not going on the ship. And it so happened that the brigadier came up to try and pacify them. He got up on a mailbox that was on the station platform, started to speak, address the crowd, and a little I don't know, he's Indian or Aboriginal fella, very, very dark anyway. He jumped up on the box and gave the brigadier a boot in the backside and said, "Get off, mongrel," he said, "and let someone here that can talk." So anyway, I don't know what he had to say, but it wouldn't have been too much anyway. And they spent the powers that be spent the next week going around the camps looking for whoever caused the trouble. And he was one of them, and I think he got 9 months in the clink for it. But anyway, when he got out, he said to me, "Now how the hell would they pick me out?" Well, you wouldn't be able to expect to be able to pick out a black fella from about 10,000 whites, would you? Anyway, he was a good fellow just the same. And then we did a few manoeuvres around Guinea and Narrabri and that, and then were put on the train to go to Western Australia, up in the northwest of Western Australia, because by that time the Japs had come into the war and they were expecting that that's where they would land. So we put in some time there. It took us 14 days to go in the train from Gunnedah to where it was up in the north, Western Australia, and 7 days to go across the Nullarbor. And of course there was a kitchen on the train at that particular time. We'd pull up across the Nullarbor for a meal. Nothing there bar a bit of salt bush and spinifex and so on. And the Aboriginals would appear from nowhere in their droves, in their wild state, spears and nullas and whatever it have. And the scraps would be thrown out and the poor wretches would be into it like nobody's business trying to get a snack. Anyway, we got to wherever our destination was. I was there 4 days and sent back to Melbourne to do a wireless school. Well, I'd be the last person in the world that would be involved in wireless. I wasn't a wireless operator. It was a 6-week school and I wasn't interested in it at all, but I did learn a few things about wireless. In fact, I did fairly with the exam. They must have got my papers mixed up with someone else because I got nearly the highest pass in the school. And but anyway, that's beside the point. And then being able to drive a tank, I got sent to a place in Newcastle named, or near Maitland, named Largs, 4 or 5 of us, to teach other people to drive tanks. And they were all officers and captains, colonels, majors and whatever. And to have a couple of corporals and sergeants standing over them, we made the best of it. We made them do everything possible. But anyway, we got out of that, and then I went back to Western Australia, and I was there for quite a long time. And I was in charge of a tank there. I had a tank, I forgot, I think the name of it was the Indomitable, some name like that. But anyway, then after some time I left there, and I went back to Sydney and I joined the Australian small ships. We did a camp at Mount Martha in Melbourne about ships and so on, and then I went to, from there I went to New Guinea.